This guy's got a good knack at just catching the froth and dropping on in.
My name's David Stewart. I'm from Canada, Vancouver Island. I grew up in Squamish, B.C. till I was 18 or 19 and then moved to Vancouver Island.
And from what I understand, David, your encounters, we're both here learning to surf at this surf resort. It's kind of cool that we met and we both have an interest in Bigfoot. And the encounters that you had, from what I understand, they weren't actually on Vancouver Island, they were on the mainland
In Squamish, yeah. Squamish,
why don't you just tell me about some of what you went through?
So the first one was, there was 3 of us, me and 2 friends, and we were driving a motorbike down the side of this dike, the Squamish River, and there was a black ball right on the edge. And when we went by, like, we were pretty close to it because I thought it was a bear, and it swiped his hand at me like this, and it was just 5 fingers, swiped it right by us, and it missed us.
How big was the arm?
It was a juvenile.
It was a juvenile.
Yeah, I would say the ball was like that big.
Yeah.
The arm was pretty long though, like it wasn't a paw, because it turned like that, right?
Uh-huh.
Like sideways.
So
like
it was bigger than my arm?
Yeah, it was definitely maybe a bit bigger, yeah.
A bit bigger than my arm. It swiped at you.
Yeah.
And you both, what did you do?
I don't know,
probably,
I just turned to my friends and was like, what the hell was that? That wasn't a bear, right?
Yeah.
And then...
and where is this at exactly? Squamish?
Squamish, B.C., the Squamish River, right at the end of it where the spit is.
Uh-huh.
They do a lot of windsurfing down there and stuff.
Oh, okay.
But there wasn't much windsurfing back then. There is now, though.
And you were tooling along like on an ATV?
Just an old Honda motorbike. And there was 3 of us on it.
Wow.
Just
Was
cruising
it a
along.
Honda 90?
No, it was a 500 actually.
A 500?
Yeah, it was an old
Yeah,
street bike. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It was crazy. I don't know. We had no sandals or nothing on, just shorts.
That's something else.
Yeah. That was crazy.
And you all talked about it and thought, man, that's no bear, huh?
That's, it was definitely a Bigfoot. It's the hand that got me sold on it, right? Because like, you could tell the neck hair, how it was, when it was balled up, it was like sticking up like that, like almost like a grizzly bear when their hair clumps up, or the hump part there, if it was balled up, but it was black and it had a hand.
Isn't that something? And what about that creepy time when you were a 9-year-old where the Bigfoot appeared in your basement window?
And my house, I lived in the basement, and there was a window about, I don't know, 3 feet by 3 feet, I guess. And then I heard something.
I had one of those in our basement too.
Yeah, it's like 2 feet off the ground or whatever. The Sasquatch, I could see it bent right over looking, it was like this far from the glass, looking in the light. And he obviously knew that I couldn't see it, but the head was huge. Like,
wow, let me get that reference on camera here.
Like it was big. Like
the head alone was like that big.
Yeah, it was looking straight down, bent right over, looking in my window, and it was like that.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, and
so the head alone was like
I could see
over 2 feet tall.
It looked exactly like the movie Harry and the Henderson.
Harry and the Hendersons, is that a Bigfoot movie?
It is, an old Bigfoot movie.
Wow, so that looked just like Harry and the Hendersons. And what did it do?
It didn't do anything. I was so scared that I put my head over the blankets and sat there.
Wow, did you have like freak out incidents for a while after that?
No.
No?
I didn't, no dreams or anything about it, but I didn't tell anybody about it till now.
You didn't tell anybody till now. See, that's the cool thing about people coming out of the closets about their interviews, about their stuff. I was telling David that I've now interviewed 44 people on camera that said they saw Bigfoot with their own eyes. And when people realize that people are coming out about it to a credible, level-headed guy, And many of these people that have shared it with me are super credible, down-to-earth type guys. There's high school teachers, there's college football refs, there's military, there's police officers, everybody, and lab techs, insurance adjusters, all kinds of people. And when credible, level-headed people are coming out, you don't hear that about the unicorn. You don't hear 44 people on camera, 45 now, that said they saw a unicorn with their own eyes.
Exactly.
It's probably true.
Yeah. And where I live in Vancouver Island now, you see the Canadian parks. All parks on Vancouver Island have a piece of paper that says there might be Sasquatch in the area.
Yeah, because Tom Standing took them to court, and now they're dealing with it as a real thing.
Yeah, it's true.
Wow.
And around Mount Washington, B.C., on Vancouver Island, there's those signs.
Can you tell that amazing story about that guy that got abducted in his sleeping bag?
Yeah, there's a story of this guy.
Now, how did you come about this story anyway?
Because I'm a logger. I fall trees for a living.
Okay.
So.
Oh, he's a sawyer.
Yeah. Lumberjack.
Uh-huh.
I'm dropping banana. So the story is the guy went into this inlet where natives, actual real natives, like indigenous people of BC, they live there. And there's like totem poles that are still on the ground there from hundreds of years ago and stuff, like sticking up. And he went there to go work, and he was living in this tent. And he got picked up in his tent one night and in his sleeping bag, and the Bigfoot threw him over the sleeping bag and took him back to the Bigfoot family and kept him there for 2 or 3 days. And then the guy had a tin of chew in his pocket, and he kept taking a dip out of it every once in a while, and the Bigfoot realized that, what is that, food or what? So he went and grabbed all of it and put it in his mouth, and the Bigfoot ate it and got sick, and that's how he got away.
Isn't that something? The guy's still alive. Got away.
Today.
And I was telling him that when I was a kid around Hungry Horse, there's not that much to do. So sometimes we're doing this crazy stuff just because we don't have nothing to do. And my buddy and I, Jimmy, we were catching perch mostly. And then we'd take our can of chew out. He chewed Skull and I chewed Copenhagen. And we'd ram it down the fish's mouth. You know, a nasty thing to do, but like I say, we did have nothing to do.
Yeah.
And then we'd release the fish into the water, and they'd go crazy and they'd go berserk. And so I could understand how a mouthful of chew, even to a Bigfoot, could produce those weird symptoms and let him get away. And where exactly was that at again?
It was on the coast of BC. It's called Toba Inlet.
Toba Inlet.
Yeah, it's like, if you look on a map from Campbell River on Vancouver Island, it's straight towards the mainland.
Straight toward the mainland there.
There's nothing there now but a logging. They just log in there, and they do grizzly bear tours in there, the natives do.
Did the guy come out about it on film somewhere, or did you actually meet this guy in a logging camp?
The stories from logging.
Stories from logging,
I never ever met him, no.
Wow.
But it is a crazy story.
That is a crazy story. You know, a native guy told me this story that was amazing up in BC, and the name will come to me in a minute. It's way up high in BC, and the guy was a Blackfeet, and he was visiting up there, and the native people said, now whatever you do or don't do, don't go up in that bowl above our community. And they said to him, why not? Is because years and years ago, they said that the Bigfoot could communicate. The Bigfoot, can you grab it please, son? This is my wife. This is my wife, Mary. What, sweetheart?
I gotta change his diaper.
Okay, sweetheart, thanks.
Okay, I'll see you later.
So the Bigfoot were coming into town and creating all kinds of hell for the native people. And so they sent a couple of guys up there on a peacekeeping delegation and said, we'd like to invite some of your leaders down into town to have a convocation of sorts.
Yeah.
So it's ancient lore of the native people there. It's not like something that happened even in the 1900s, but they said that a delegation of Bigfoot came down and they could communicate.
Right.
And they fed them good. They fed a nice meal. And then they said, now listen, we notice that you guys are coming down in here and raising everything that we have to do with, and how can we absolve this? And they said, well, the reason that we're doing this is you're coming onto our turf. It's almost like a gang war type situation. You're coming onto our turf, you're picking our berries, you're shooting our deer, you're messing with our food source, and if you'll just stop it, we'll stop doing what we're doing. So they made an accord, and from that day to this, the native people don't go up there, and there's peace among the Bigfoot.
And all the natives around where I live on Vancouver Island, all their totem poles have a Bigfoot at the very bottom of them. That's the first
Very
thing.
bottom,
Yeah.
really.
Because you know they carve all the animals up
Yeah,
there.
and there's a Bigfoot.
The Bigfoot's always at the bottom. Yeah.
At the bottom, that's interesting.
It is interesting. I don't know the meaning or the story behind it, but
I do know
I
that
know that that's what it is.
in every native language there is a native word for Bigfoot, and that's more than a coincidence.
Yeah.
That's interesting that Canada as a country is starting to post the signs and treat it as a real species.
It is a real species, yeah.
Yeah, it is a real species. And my I've posted a sign on the end of Incredible Bigfoot Documentary 1 where there's actually a sign near the Kookanusa River, not that far from Libby and Troy, that also warn people, you know, they're basically peace-loving creatures. If you come across one, don't get in its face and you'll probably be okay, sort of thing on the government sign.
Right.
Now, why do you think, as a Sawyer, that in many cases the government has intentionally covered it up over the years?
I don't know. I don't know. The natives around where I live say they're shapeshifters, but I don't know.
I always felt it's because of the impact it would have to the logging industry.
And scare people.
Yeah, and scare people.
Yeah, I think that's probably.
Oh, well, thanks, David, so much. Is there any other little tidbit you'd like to share before we
No, I think
sign
that's
off
about
here?
it. Thanks.
Well, I sure appreciate that, David, that you shared this with people. It will just add to the knowledge base of what we have and know about the Bigfoot.
Yeah, I'll try. I took a picture of that Bigfoot commercial parks thing. If I find it, I'll get it to you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I sure appreciate
Then
it.
you
Thank
can
you so
post
very
it.
much for sharing these amazing stories. That's amazing that you never had any like nightmares or freak out incidents. That you must be a pretty stout-hearted individual, you know, to deal with that as a young lad.
I don't know. I've lived in the nature and loved the nature, so I just that to me just seems like I was scared at the time, but I know they're harmful. They don't harm people.
Hey, tell me just about that rock incident, because that's what got me interested in the whole.
Oh yeah.
I didn't believe in the Bigfoot, and then I had an incident where some giant rocks were heaved into the inlet in the middle of the night, and we didn't see the creature because it was pitch black. But that always got me interested and kind of probing into it. But
okay. So the story is, it was about 2 a.m, and we were driving up the very bottom part of Mount Washington, the ski hill in Comox Valley on Vancouver Island.
On Vancouver Island.
There's a logging road that you turn off the highway to go up to Mount Washington, and then like half a kilometer there's a logging road that turns, and it parallels the highway pretty much all the way to Campbell River. So it's not that far off the highway.
This is definitely on Vancouver Island.
Yes, Vancouver Island. And then we were about halfway in between Comox and Campbell River, and we just parked and we're playing around or whatever, and then all of a sudden it was summertime, so the creeks were dried up. I heard something walk down this creek, and the creek's got boulders in it like this, so it's a rough walking creek. I could hear the rocks moving around every step it took, and it walked down the creek beside us and then over to this little pond, or a little bit of a lake, I guess. There's no beavers in the lake, and it was picking up rocks and throwing them in the water, and it would just be, the sploosh would be like sploosh, right?
Yeah.
And then I was like, me and my girlfriend at the time were talking about it, and she says there's Bigfoot around here, and I was like, that's definitely a Bigfoot. But I was so curious about the sound, I went back there the next day without her, and I tried picking up a big enough rock to make the same sploosh sound, and I couldn't. Like, my rocks were like sploosh,
Yeah.
sploosh, and this thing was like sploosh, right? Like, the rocks must have been like that.
I really appreciate that story, because it was a spooky night on this lonely island on a canoe trip. My buddy and I said to him, Jay, are you up? I can't seem to sleep. And he said, no, I can't sleep either, man. There's something watching us, and it's freaking me out. And right as he said that, there was this giant splash in the Finger Inlet. And I've been around beaver all my life. We fished around this pond with beaver, and I've heard many beaver slap their tail. And
Yeah.
it can be pretty loud and a little startling, but this was like, probably, I'm just guessing, like 9 or 10 times that powerful. And I never believed in Bigfoot, and I never believed in it, but it always, in the back of my mind, I thought, well, what was that then? It wasn't a beaver. It definitely was, and it happened again, it definitely was something really freaking crazy. And I heard this weird story in Reader's Digest, where it was a true story where a goose flew so high that it froze, and it come crashing down to earth as kind of a frozen torpedo and splashed really hard. And I thought, well, maybe that's what it was. But then I became a believer in Bigfoot, and I actually was interviewing a guy who said his crazy girlfriend would see him and even feed him in that section of the Flathead River.
Wow.
And it explained everything once he said
That's
that.
crazy.
Well, really nice to
Yeah,
meet you,
nice
David,
to
and
meet you
thanks
too.
so much.
For sure.
He kept saying that the head looked just like the head of the Bigfoot on Harry and the Hendersons. I've never watched that show, but I'm going to. It sounds like a pretty cool show, and they evidently had a pretty realistic Bigfoot.